Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore, who appears to me to still be in Seattle.
Still, yeah, actually Everett, but that's okay.
Close, right? Close.
Blending with the background, I see.
Well, so as of today, we have exactly 2,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Excellent.
So we had another nice little milestone. Yeah, we hit 1,000 back in started July. So took a year to get the first 1,000. Took 5 more months to get the next 1,000. So
that's an improvement. Let's go for 3,000 at 3 months. How's that?
Well, we'll see how that plays out. It just I'm always amazed. Sometimes we started this just as kind of something to do, and now more and more people tune in. We just never really know what we're gonna get, right?
That's right.
It's been fun doing this, and it's fun seeing the growth in the channel and all that. So we'll see where that leads. All right, you want to tell me a story about little Abner?
Okay, so when I was a young whippersnapper, and this had to be in, I think, the late 50s. Those of you that are old enough, like me, will remember there used to be a thing called the Sunday comic strips. And so every Sunday, our local paper would have a separate set of 3-4 sheets that were devoted to comics. And then one of the most popular comics, and probably one of the longest running, because I think it ran from the early 1930s through 1960s, was one called Little Abner. And this was kind of a take on, rednecks and hillbillies and, entertaining. And of course, the chief character was, Little Abner was a big, hulking, handsome young guy. And it was set in a town called Dogpatch. Okay. So in one of those episodes, they would run a series of stories over the course of several weeks or a month. One of those had to do with an entrepreneur who came to town and sold really cheap electric cars. Okay? The cars were so cheap that everybody wanted one, and he sold them just hand over fist. The catch is that you had to buy an extension cord from him. And that's where he made his money. In fact, this is the interesting part. He became the richest man in the world selling people electric cars and the extension cords to go with them. And I thought, I wonder if that's a faulty memory that I have or whatever. So I started doing a little bit of research. And I found a gentleman who lives back in Massachusetts, who is one of the world's leading archivists on funnies, on the newspaper, comics in the newspaper. So I reached out to him, and he answered me.
Oh, wow.
Basically because we're about the same age and have similar interests. And so he did, in fact, confirm that he, too, remembers a similar strip in Little Abner, but he could not remember when. And he said, well, if you want to come here to Amherst, Massachusetts, I'll let you wade through my library.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That's
see if you can find that particular comic strip. I don't know how long that would take. So if there are any listeners who live in Amherst and have an interest in doing a little research on this, I'll put you in touch with the gentleman.
That's hilarious. I mean, I can just imagine this, because it does look like
comic strip.
It does look like at some point that the Tesla supercharger network will be the one ring to rule them all.
The One Ring to rule them all. That's right. The invisible extension cord.
Yeah.
And I think they called the guy's name was Bull Moose or something like
Mhm.
that, right? It's ironic that the cartoonist didn't give him a name like, oh, I don't know, Mutt or something like that. Okay, I guess my daughter's giant schnauzer's deciding to make himself known. So if you hear a
That's
dog,
okay.
that's a great big black dog with really long, sharp teeth.
But it is really fascinating, though, that little Abner would have done a story about electric cars years
In
ago.
the 50s. Yeah, this had to be late 50s or very early 1960s. And again, neither of us remember, myself and the gentleman who's one of the world experts.
Right. Exactly when.
But it was sometime around that period of time when we were both kids reading the comics, right?
Right. Oh, I get it. I get it. Oh, that's hilarious. So I want to talk. I found this article about nuclear energy, and this came to me from reason.com.
Okay.
Okay. Now, reason.com, if I'm right, is a fairly left-leaning article. Okay, very liberal in their views, all that. But what was nice is I think they actually painted a pretty good story about nuclear. Okay, so a lot of times, if you get a story that's too far left, nuclear is the devil. Okay, and so you get some interesting things. So this is from an economic standpoint. Every nuclear plant built could save more than 800,000 life years. So the amount of cleanup in the environment done from nuclear power plants, basically each one would add about 800,000 years of life to people in that country, cumulatively from the amount of power it puts out versus the amount of coal and LNG and other
Right.
things that end
Right.
up needing to be refined. One of the most interesting things I saw um, was that due to Chernobyl in April 1986, it resulted in 400 fewer nuclear power plants being built. Okay.
Okay.
Um, let's see. They actually gave statistics about um, where this would go. Okay. So in the late 60s, the Atomic Energy Commission anticipated that 1,000 mostly fast breeder reactors would supply 70% of America's electricity by 2000. Now, of course, we know that didn't happen, right?
Right.
So only 20% of U.S. power comes from nuclear, and they're chiefly old-fashioned light water reactors that
Right.
were built years ago. They're mostly out of date.
1950s design. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, air pollution obviously has caused great harm. I mean, we made great inroads with the reduction of how much coal is used and how many people die from lung problems and stuff being near coal-powered power plants over the years. But
Typically located in areas where there are a greater incidence of poverty and people living below the poverty line.
so, according to the World Health Organization and the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, global air pollution mortality estimates show that between 4.2 and 4.5 million people die prematurely from exposure to outdoor air pollution annually. That's worldwide. 4.2 to 4, it's somewhere in the 4 millions,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think because that'd be
Yeah,
like,
but then if you look at the photographs of places like Mumbai and cities in China, you can see why. How in the world people live there?
that'd be like wiping out a
Unfortunately,
city like St. Louis. That'd be like the St. Louis metro area every year. I mean, it's
population, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a staggering amount of people. Um, let me see. The proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences calculated 3.6 million people die prematurely from the burning of fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
The study estimated there's 194,000 annual premature deaths in the United States, resulting from fossil fuel air pollution, which amounts to an annual loss of 5.7 million life years. Okay, so that's across all people that have issues. Now, if we contrast this with the number of deaths associated with generating nuclear power, 3 Mile Island in 1979, the meltdown caused no injuries or deaths. Fukushima's 2011 may have led to just one radiation-related death. I thought there was some workers who went in there and died from, from the action. So they're discounting
15 years now. So
this article seems to be discounting the workers who died in the Fukushima accident.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when they go to Chernobyl, the blast initially killed 2 workers and 47 emergency workers who doused the core fires later died of radiation exposure. So that was 49 from that. Now, obviously, Ukraine, even in this conflict in Ukraine, it's estimated that quite a few Russian soldiers, when they occupied the Chernobyl zone, probably have died already from radiation exposure in that zone.
I just watched a commentary today on a British British online source talking about the Russians are preparing to launch a massive attack in the Zaporizhia area, which is another very
Massive.
large, nuclear power plant. They're concerned that that could create another Chernobyl. The interesting
the Russians currently hold the factory. I mean, the Russians currently hold that nuclear power plant.
Yes, exactly. The other interesting thing is that I learned was that part of the power from the Chernobyl facility was directed to operating the world's largest over-the-horizon radar system, and that system and the feedback from that system is speculated may in fact have caused the reactor meltdown.
Wow.
Yeah. So not only it took out the power that was supplying a lot of it to the region, but also took out a top secret. Although I don't know how you could keep a top secret. This thing is
I've seen it.
20 stories high and half a mile long.
No, it's huge. It's a huge apparatus.
Yeah, it's gigantic. So, called the woodpecker.
So economists speculate that the amount of air pollution reduced would save each nuclear power plant would save 800,000 life years. Now, over the past 38 years, Chernobyl reduced the total number of nuclear power plants by 389, which is almost entirely driven by the shutdown of new construction in democracies. Our calculations thus suggest that globally more than 318 million expected life years have been lost in democratic countries due to the decline in nuclear power plant growth in these countries. The US lost approximately 141 million life years due to the slowdown in nuclear power deployment. Those are big numbers. Those are really big numbers. Now, that would speculate in the United States, that would be everybody in America has lost about 6 months of life as a result of the lack of nuclear power plant development. I think we're going to see it come back. I mean, I don't know.
Well, of course, the footprint, if you compare the footprint of a nuclear power plant to an equivalent generating capacity for wind or solar, there's no comparison, right? I mean, it's a very concentrated form of energy, but unfortunately is not economic compared to this, wind or solar. Now you have to add, but you got to add battery backup to that. I think even with adding the battery backup, it's still more economical. And then we have the problem of what the heck do we do with the waste? Now the fast breeder issue was that they would use the waste if I'm remembering correctly, you would use the waste from a conventional, light water reactor plant, these long, tubes of graphite or uranium, sorry, and you could take and reprocess those and then use those over again, right? Because only I
Right.
think something like once the visibility or whatever the proper term is of those tubes decreases to somewhere around 90%, something like that, they
Mhm.
have to replace them, and that takes about something like every 5 years. They have to shut the plant down and pull the old rods out and put the new rods in. So, well, where do those rods go? Well, the rods go into a pool on the site, of mineral-free water, right, distilled water, and then they sit in that pool until they can figure out what we do with them. And so, what we do with them has been debated for decades now. In
Right.
fact, there's just an article that I came across today saying that there's these catacombs that are I call it catacombs. I think they call it tomb. That they want to build, but nobody can enter for 100,000 years. And of course, what they're talking about is here's where we're going to put all those spent rods. Now, size wise, if you compare all of the nuclear rods that need to be either buried or sunk in a pool or whatever, compared to the amount of waste material from coal-fired plants, no comparison, right? I mean, it's tiny footprint area compared to the vast amounts of coal slag and all that material that's come from that. So there's a huge difference. It's only a small footprint, but it's a footprint that's dangerous for generations to come. Think 100,000 years. I mean, modern man hasn't been around.
Right. No, I
We
get it.
still had mastodons and giant bison and giant sloths and saber-toothed tigers. Those were still roaming the earth, right?
Right.
100,000 years ago. So the economics is the problem and the waste is the problem. And I always have this question of why do we need the temperature of the sun to boil water? You only have to get to 212 degrees or 100 degrees centigrade Celsius to boil water, because what you want is the steam to spin the turbines to generate the electricity. So why do we need temperatures in the millions of degrees to accomplish that when it's much easier using concentrated solar or
Right, I get it.
here's where we're going. Article again this week came out. We need the oil and gas industry workers and their technology to get down deep enough to begin to pull the heat out of the geothermal layers, and that easily gets us to the temperature to boil water. We need that technology. We need those workers. We just need to figure out to stop pulling the crap poison out of the ground and use it to generate clean green electricity with no waste. I think. Now, who knows? Somebody will come up with but if you pull that out, you're pulling all these minerals, and what are you going to do with all those minerals? And
Put them in your EVs.
turn them, power the batteries.
Right. Power the batteries. Yeah. I've seen that. It's like the discussion. I had the guy on here one time. We talked about the Salton Sea in California, and how you can pull lithium right out of all those old oil tubes that are going down into the earth.
Right.
And that all these critical minerals that we supposedly need to source from overseas, they're all right there in California. You just got to extract them.
By the way, the Chinese have just now embargoed gallium, iridium, and there's one other of those minerals that you need to make microprocessors. They just because we are banning the use of, the sale of our microchips to China. They're saying, okay, fine, we'll just cut off the minerals that you need to make those chips. So,
Wow. Well, that'll be interesting. The source from somewhere else, I suppose.
Well, I assume they can probably, we can probably pull them
I have
out
a
of.
hard time believing that there's anything that on Earth that only exists in one country.
Oh yeah, yeah. My daughter last night she's a fan of a show on one of the channels anyway, of opal hunters, right, in Australia. And these guys have gone into these mines that were given up decades and decades ago that they still think has enough valuable opals in it. And I keep thinking, I asked, what are opals good for? And as far as we know, only their decorative value. Unless somebody maybe can figure out, and all that dirt and minerals they're pulling up, maybe there's some precious minerals in there that could be used for things other than decorating the pendants, around your neck. So anyway.
Don't they make good heavy trucks?
Good heavy trucks?
Yeah. Opel's a German truck brand.
Oh, no, not those kind, the sparkly kind.
No, I know.
I think it's spelled differently.
OPEL, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's they're probably not in business anymore either. They were they were big at one time. Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Okay. So who do the Saudis own? They own Lucid. Okay. And Lucid is on track to start producing 10,000 EVs annually in Saudi Arabia. Now, Lucid's technically a luxury EV brand. Some people try to say that all EVs are luxury brands, but that's far from the truth.
Yeah.
But Lucid is definitely a luxury brand. That's probably why they've never really, hit it big, because they tried to produce a luxury vehicle when they don't have like a big backstory or anything like that. They were simply trying to put out a better Tesla.
Rolls-Royce.
Yeah. And I think that's a tough space to get into. But since the Saudis already owned about 2/3 of Lucid, they've decided to start making them there instead of just having them made in Arizona.
They actually started assembling them in 2023. They would called partial knockdown kits.
Yes.
They would put enough of the car together to put it in a crate and ship it. I would assume by boat, right, to Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, or wherever they're doing the assembly. I didn't see from the article where it's being done, but I would guess it's probably done on the Red Sea side. So that would make sense to send it through the Mediterranean down the Red Sea to Jeddah or somewhere like that. They sent them over. Well, now they're actually building a full-scale plant to do all of the manufacturing assembly of the vehicle there in Saudi Arabia. Which
what's really weird? The article I'm looking at doesn't actually say where it's at.
No, it does not say.
That's really bizarre.
Is another side of this thing is that you can ride now a bullet train, just like in Japan, from Mecca to Medina.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me that they're probably going to, it'd be nice to maybe hook up, with that facility. So I'm guessing it's on the Red Sea side, because that seems to be where they're doing most of the development, rather than on the Persian Gulf side, which is a little more, tense political, area.
Right. So, that would make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Keep stuff away from the political hot zones.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make a lot of sense if you have unfriendly countries on one side of you to not have your manufacturing right up against them.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Yeah, they started with semi-knockdown assembly using vehicle kits pre-manufactured in Arizona. In January of 24, they began construction on an expansion to transform the plant into a complete build unit facility. Let's see if it says when they're going to. This says we're on track to build 10,000 vehicles annually. We launched it with the capacity of 5,000 vehicles, but we've expanded it. Let's see. It doesn't really say when they're going to start having actual vehicles roll off the completed
Right.
front assembly line, though.
Well, it depends on how new that photograph is. I mean, that plant is, it's not just a bunch of dirt thrown up. They've got a fair building, and assuming they use the same contractors as Tesla, who knows? It could go up pretty quickly.
It could. It could. Yeah, they're just saying they intend to eventually expand it to where it can produce 150,000 vehicles
Yeah,
annually.
yeah.
And so they'll be a exporter of something other than fuel, which I think is,
Which is
it's a
smart
nice
on their part.
it's a nice thing to see. All right, Bill, I know you really want to talk about eVTOLs because that's kind of your thing. And I find this number just staggering. I cannot believe that China says by 2030, we're talking in the
2030.
next, 5 to 6 years, they're going to have 100,000 eVTOLs for taxi and personal use.
Right. And just so everybody knows, that's
100,000.
electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft or air taxis or whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
How many aircraft do you think we have in the United States? All, private and commercial. I mean, do you think there's even 100,000 aircraft in the United States?
Hundreds of thousands, I would imagine. Yeah.
I mean, that is just a big number.
Oh, yeah. And how many people? All the ones that I've seen are always they're priced in the $250,000 range. Unless you get one of these little single person things like the guys that are in Italy that are building, and even those as kits are north of six figures. So you start talking about something that'll carry more than just one passenger for a few minutes. You're talking in the multi-million-dollar range. So are there
I looked
enough?
it up. There's a little over 200,000 total military, commercial, and general aviation aircraft
Right,
in the
yeah.
United States, just over 200,000. At any given time, there are 5,000 aircraft in the sky in the United States.
Oh yeah, I know. I will periodically check out. There's apps that allow you to check flights and things, and flight aware and flight radar or something like that. So you can see that, and it's amazing. In fact, if you look on a global level, it's just dumbfounding. All of the aircraft that are in the air at any given moment. And what's also interesting is, as you're probably aware, there's a political situation now, taking place in Syria, where there's questions as to, where is the Assad government and what happened to the Russian troops? And there's so if you check, I would bet now if you check Flight Aware or one of those apps, you're going to see there's no aircraft flying over that area right now. Because anytime there's a hot spot, the airlines, which are mainly what you're tracking, they're tracking airlines. They just avoid those areas, obviously, like the plague. So I bet.
Well, look at what happened. What was that, 2015, when that Malaysian airliner flew over the Donbass and got shot down?
Yep. Got shot down and crash landed very near where my uncle's grave is located.
Huh. Anyways, it's but this whole thing, 100,000 now. I'm going to post this one up on the screen. because I think this is fascinating. I mean, most people look at these and they just say, "Oh, that's just a helicopter," but it's 4, 5 rotors on this thing.
Yeah, that's a new one I haven't seen. That's an interesting one.
Five
That's
looks
kind
like
of based on
five
the
rotors.
original German one.
Not a whole lot of pictures here today,
No, no.
but it's just hard to fathom that they anticipate that kind of growth
Yeah.
in these vehicles. A
Well, we'll
hundred
see.
thousand in 6 years. I don't know. I mean, it could happen. It could happen. It's just hard to fathom. China is 5 times the population of the United States. It would seem if you looked at it that way, and if you 5x the number of aircraft in the United States to say 1 million, for China, but you just said that now they're going to have 10% of that number be eVTOL. So if we were looking at in the United States, it'd be like 20,000. Yeah. But still, it's a awfully big number.
Well, I guess what we should look up is how many millionaires does China have today?
Oh God, I'm sure that's a big number. Hong Kong has the highest concentration of people over 100 million net worth in the world. But do you know where that is in the United States? What city in the United States has the highest concentration of 100 people over 100 million net worth?
No.
It's in the next county north of us. It's Omaha. Omaha
Okay,
is
Douglas.
the
Yeah,
number one, is top in the United States.
I'm asking Pi. Let's see, how many millionaires estimate? Oh my God. How many millionaires in China? Pi responds, it is estimated there are 6.2 million millionaires in China in 2024.
Making it second after the United States.
6.2 million millionaires. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. So there'd be a market for 100,000. I could see that now. That makes sense.
Yeah. The United States is around 24 million. So it's I think it's about
Really?
one
Wow.
in it's about 1 in 10 households in the United States is a millionaire household. So
I'm not one of
them. Anyways, let's see. All right, let's move on. And I have another aviation article, but we'll see if we have time to get to it. Let's talk about Elon Musk. So I don't know how this keeps happening.
Let's talk about Elon Musk. Yeah.
Yeah. Judge denies Musk
another slap in the face. So
Judge denies Elon Musk's $1 billion Tesla pay package for a second. Now, I thought it was like a $50 billion pay package.
Yeah, this is a little confusing because one article referred to, I think it was $101 million. And I thought that the whole thing was like 56 billion dollars.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what they're using for a reference. Maybe that's his monthly.
I don't know how they do this. So in 2018, it was a 56 billion that was for hitting certain economic numbers for the shareholders. But he just again been denied a second time by a judge, despite being overwhelmingly reapproved by Tesla shareholders. What is a judge? This is the same Judge Kathleen McCormick in Delaware upheld her original ruling that called the payment excessive. Well, nobody would deny that it's excessive, but a lot of this happened kind of by accident, right? It wasn't like, oh, how do I, make $50 billion in a couple of years? They didn't expect for Tesla to become $1 trillion company for a while. And, how do you foresee that? I mean, the company was worth more than any other auto manufacturer on earth.
Yeah.
from a shareholder perspective.
What is $55 million compared to a trillion?
Well, billion. It would be 5%, 5% of a trillion. So, I mean, it's a, it's still a big number any way you look at it. Musk doesn't really seem to care about money that much. I mean, it's interesting to see some of this, but he's not the world's richest man because he just willed it. It's because people have decided that the things that he has his hands on are worth that much money.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be a part of that. Or I'd say lots of people who have what I would consider to be smart money people believe in the guy. We talked about this a lot because I kind of crap on a lot of these CEOs in the EV space. Kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why don't you get somebody else to come in and take over this company? Because clearly the current management isn't getting it done.
We just had another CEO get fired.
Stellantis.
Yeah, Stellantis. Yeah.
And I do have. I don't think I took any news on Stellantis today, but that guy's needed to go. I mean, like three of the worst companies that can't seem to sell their product because they're overpriced have been Stellantis companies.
And they're so far behind the times.
I
mean, they're building stuff that would have been exciting in the 60s.
I get it, but Dodge, even though that probably would be your 60s remark, they still have great looking vehicles. They have great looking cars. They're Ram trucks. I think they're the best looking trucks. They're the worst quality trucks of the American manufacturers, but they look great. They look great. I understand why people want to drive.
When you first roll off the thing, but I've always noticed the Dodge trucks are the very first ones to rust out in the fender wells.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. I love having Dodge vehicles for rental cars when I travel, but they're also the only brand I've ever had have things break. When I say break, like either the analog or the digital system stopped working. But fortunately, all the cars I had both. You had the choice of using the analog controls or the digital controls. So if one wasn't working, the other did. But I've had some frustration. I think the worst, although I've gotten in Mercedes and I didn't know how to work the controls, and nobody at the rental agency did either. So I'll just say that some brands, yeah, but I love getting Dodge cars and trucks as rental vehicles because but I wouldn't want to own one. Okay, I wouldn't want to own one because it just, with the exception maybe Jeep. I've owned Jeeps over the years, but even still, they're a nightmare for.
Twice actually.
But they were big money pits. Okay, but they were kind of fun vehicles to have, and so you kind of accepted that. One of the beauties of, beauties or not beauties, depending on how you look at it, the EV market is not great for modding. Okay, for people modifying their cars and stuff like that. There are some stuff that's done out there to some brands like Tesla and stuff like that for body kits. But the other thing is there's not a lot of work for mechanics. There's just not that much that goes wrong. There's, you're not going to run out of transmission shops.
Unless you're a computer hacker.
Yeah. I mean, it's just.
Then you could, there's an article I think we published that talks about a guy who has unlocked all of the potential of his Tesla by hacking the system.
Oh, that's funny.
Whatever that means. So.
Yeah, who knows? But back to what's going on with Musk. Let me see. Musk's pay plan, which is now worth more than $100 billion. It's gone up from the 56 billion to now 100 billion, following a 44% rise in Tesla's share price since January. It was reapproved by 84% of the shares not held by Musk or his brother. So people outside of his family, 84% of shareholders approved. And Musk said, I just want to start off by saying, hot damn, I love you guys at a investor conference. But McCormick denied the motion to reverse her decision on Monday. She wrote that while the defense firms got creative with the ratification argument, their unprecedented theories go against multiple strains of settled law. Now, Musk has said he would never advise anybody to incorporate in Delaware again. Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was planning on moving all of that. That process will take longer than.
Yeah, I don't know what the status of that is, but Musk receives no salary from Tesla. Musk's pay package of 300 million Tesla shares is directly linked to the company's performance. While McCormick wrote that Musk is entitled to some form of compensation, the award was not fair to shareholders. The thing is, if the stock was worth $1, it'd still be $300 million, right? It still seemed like a lot of money, right? Yeah. But, when it's worth several $100s, it starts being completely different numbers. I don't know. It's just fascinating to think that the numbers in the billions.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'd be interested to see, what are the legal, precedences that she is using for that, because that's what she says. It's they're via whatever they're attempting to do is violating settled law, whatever that is. So hey, if any lawyers might be listening, if you want to kind of comment on that for us and educate Dave and me on that particular topic, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, it just seems really weird how she would interfere with a CEO's pay, because like I said, he's not even being paid a salary. It's not like I've had some criticisms of some other companies I've been vociferous about because the company was losing money, but the CEO was taking a $9 million a year salary. Yeah. And I'm just like, and the company was only losing about 16 million a year. It's like, cut your salary to 1 or 2 million. Show that you're really trying here. Voluntarily cut that.
Do a little negotiating, take a little more stock out, get a little more vested interest in the success of the company.
Yeah, some of that just drives me crazy. All right, let's talk about Jaguar. So, what is the deal? So,
do you like the design? What's your reaction?
I think it looks good. I mean, I don't see any.
Show people what we're talking about.
I'm not sure about this pink color. This is what you're talking about here?
That was done for Miami, because flamingo pink is a thing.
Got it.
For Miami, and that the blue was, I think, London blue or something like that. There's 2 colors that they did this in, but the pink was for Miami.
But this model won't be for sale anytime. We don't know which design elements will end up, has divided opinion.
Let's see.
New direction has been getting.
That didn't help much.
No.
But it's, I don't know. It's.
There you go.
I mean, I think that has a nice look to it. I mean, I don't see the criticism of this. But what is the deal? These pictures weren't supposed to be leaked out? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Well, yeah, that was part of it. Then who knows, right? Some smart marketing kid, said, "Hey, let's really call," and because if you'll check my feed, the RSS feed, there's at least a dozen stories on this now. They have generated all kinds of publicity, whether they wanted it or not. They got it. So they've got all kinds of reactions. People who love it, people who are offended by it because it goes against Jaguar tradition, or it got notoriety and publicity. That's for
I've
sure.
actually thought the thing about the logo, to me, that seemed to be not just a publicity stunt, but I have this weird feeling that it's kind of like the new Coke, old Coke thing, that they're going to create this and then they're going to go back to the old one and people will be so happy. Like it's going to, that's my weird theory, is that that's what's going on here.
Yeah, look at the controversy over Audi, right? The Audis being sold in China do not have the 4 rings anymore. It's just the word Audi. So
That's
they're going
weird.
through a little bit of a rebranding, and they decided, well, we'll just get rid of the four ring logo that they've used for decades.
That doesn't make
Now
sense. I mean,
it just
that's
says Audi.
yeah. I don't know. I don't understand why they would do that either. Because when you see the rings, you know exactly what you're getting into. Um,
Well,
the confusing.
what I miss is the jumping Jaguar on the hood. Where's
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. When you had the little.
Right, when you had the little figurine, right, of the little
Right.
Jaguar.
Yeah, I miss the figurines. I always thought those were pretty cool, but nobody has those anymore.
Well, there's a safety reason for that because they were impaling people. You
know. Were they getting pedestrians with them or what?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh Lord, those are the problems that people get.
That grew out of the Art Deco period of the 30s, right? When
Right.
you had and this car, for example, what they've done basically is done a Cybertruck version of the Auburn, right? With the long, front nose and that kind of angular. If you look at the front of that thing, it looks almost like you're looking at a Cybertruck.
Yeah, I get it.
Photo that you have.
Kind of similar.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, we said our piece about Jaguar.
Right.
Let's see. U.S. emissions. EVs help vehicle emissions drop to historic low in the U.S. EVs and plug-in hybrids brought huge climate wins for the transport sector in 23. Emissions are down, fuel economies are up. So I think you got a couple things. So the United States, we through last year, we only had about 8%, 7 to 8% of car sales for battery electric vehicles. We had another we probably were over 20% when you combined all kinds of hybrids, plug-ins, and regular. But I think one of the big things you've got is as EVs have come out, you're starting to see better and better fuel economy in gas cars. I mean, it's vastly improved to the point where now a lot of gas cars have better mileage than hybrids did 10 years ago. And, so you're seeing a fair amount of that, but you start looking at like a Toyota Camry hybrid that gets 44 miles per gallon. Toyota Sienna hybrid minivan gets 36 miles per gallon city or highway. I mean, you're starting to get some vehicles that you wouldn't think would get that kind of gas mileage are getting some crazy gas mileage now too. So I think you get a little bit of that too.
What the article is saying is there, when you take the entire fleet now, instead of where we had been, which was stuck at about 24 miles per gallon, which, by the way, was the same fuel efficiency of a Model T. now we're at over 30. I think it's like 31.6 or something like that. U.S. average fleet economy. So, and that's being because of the growth of hybrids and the growth of PHEVs and particularly EVs, where miles per gallon, like on my car, when I drive the little Fiat, I typically am seeing equivalent miles per gallon of 140 miles per gallon equivalent.
Mm-hmm. So
you take that and compare that to my Prius sitting next to it, which gets right around 40, 45 miles per gallon. Suddenly you now average those two together and you got some serious, fuel saving, energy savings there.
Right. Higher adoption of fully electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids led to a record drop in new vehicle emissions in 23. Tesla has been leading fuel economy chart for 6 straight years. Stellantis has been the worst every year since 2015. Hyundai, Kia, BMW, and Mercedes witnessed the largest emissions reductions for model year 23 cars. SUVs are now more efficient than any other body type, including sedans, thanks to electrification and higher volumes sold. That's kind of fascinating.
Yeah,
but a lot of SUVs, there's a lot of tiny SUVs that they call SUVs that just really are a car with a little higher roof. I mean,
Yep. And I don't know. The Ford has just come out with one over in Europe. There's a couple of articles that I put online about oh god, what the thing called? I forget the name of it now. Pretty yellow little thing, but it's a compact. That's the term, compact SUV. But you're right. It's just a car. It sits higher off the ground and has a higher roof line. So,
yeah, there are some small, like there's a really tiny Buick SUV. Ford has a real small one here in the U.S. Um, there's several others that just have tiny SUVs. I think when I think of SUVs, I always like to think of like a Suburban or at least an Explorer-sized vehicle.
you mean a real SUV?
Yeah, one that's going to save my family in an accident. Might not do that great for anybody else in the other vehicle, but it's good for us, right? Um, but it's just a big drop. Let's
Yeah.
see if they actually give any real numbers.
Yeah. So if you got a chance,
They gave a
look up
chart.
Puma. The
Look up what?
Ford, the new Ford compact SUV for Europe is called the Puma or the Puma, Puma. That's not a bad
See
looking.
here.
Kind of reminds me of the what they're coming out with on the Renault. Similar sort of small, or even the Scout and the Bronco, that style of vehicle.
Yeah, it's not a bad looking vehicle at all. I guess it's a little bit smaller than on the Escape, but yeah, it's nice looking. I mean,
Yep.
honestly, if I saw that, I don't know if I'd realize that was a Ford. That looks really a lot more like a Korean car or Japanese, doesn't it? Don't you think that's
Yeah,
styling?
I don't. Of course, who knows? It could have been designed there.
Yeah. Oh well. Let's see. But all manufacturers. If it weren't for EVs and hybrids, emissions would have risen the past year. And fuel efficiency would have stagnated around 24.9 mpg.
Yep.
Let's see. It's just so funny they keep ragging on Stellantis for manufacturing the dirtiest cars since 2015. Every major car manufacturer witnessed a drop in the real-world CO2 emissions among new vehicles sold, except Honda and Toyota. I guess Toyota was already doing pretty well. The most significant year-over-year came from Mercedes and BMW. Mercedes dropped 68 grams per mile of emissions, and BMW is 39 grams per mile. Anyways, it's just kind of interesting to see what kind of effect EV sales are having. I'm seeing a lot more. I don't know, a lot more crap. With Trump being elected, about people wanting EVs to go away. They're thinking that people EV haters think that's going to be the end of them or whatever.
No,
I've seen some complaints about
ain't happening.
Biden at last minute approved $6.6 billion loan for Rivian, and I'm just like, it's just a loan. I mean, almost all the car manufacturers except Ford have taken a
Have
loan from the
gotten
federal
those
government at one time.
including Tesla.
Tesla has taken it before. Isn't Ford the only company not to ever take one?
So far as I know, Ford's the only one to never declare bankruptcy and never take a government loan. But again, please, if that's my understanding, please correct me if that's not the case.
Yeah, there was this article you had posted that says electric vehicles cry me a Rivian. Like, yeah, life has not been easy of late on North Vehicle Street.
Yeah,
Let's
see. Put out by the National Review, I think. Very, very
National Review. Yeah, it's interesting that people want. It talks about Northvolt filing bankruptcy. I mean, there's companies that file bankruptcy all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in the EV space that, we talk about that. I'm like, what are these companies doing? Okay. Rivian's one I think is doing pretty good. If I were going to bet money, I think Rivian in 10 years, Rivian's going to be a big name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm betting
it's,
money.
yeah. Well, the thing is, because of this loan, we know they're going to get to be producing their vehicles in Georgia. Okay.
Right.
And they've got 100,000 pre-orders. They're going to make those. It might take them 2 years to build 100,000, but they're going to get all those out there to the masses, and they're going to start taking a significant chunk
Yeah.
of the EV space.
There's no, there was never a guarantee that all of these companies would succeed. In fact, probably the better bet is that most of them wouldn't succeed. But should we be rooting for the fact that this technology that will help we were just talking about, right, the advantages of nuclear power in terms of health.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about in terms of cars. Number one, we don't have to pull that oil out of the ground and pollute the atmosphere. You can, we were talking about earlier, you can have the luxury of refueling your car at home, right, while you're asleep. I mean, there's so many good things about the technology that have nothing to do with your political view of the world. It's just, it's just better for you, your family, your neighbors, and the planet in general.
Lady that teaches my spin class was complaining today that she was avoiding getting gas because it's so cold, and she's down to like 50 miles left in her car, and she doesn't want to go to the gas station. And it's like, well, what if you could just, if there was some way you could just fuel your car in the warmth of your own garage,
Right.
and not have to worry about going to the gas station ever again. If only somebody came up with that, wouldn't that just be an amazing idea? And it's like, is there some reason to hate that idea? Is there something just terribly wrong with the idea of being able to fuel your car for 1/3 the cost and do it at home? Ultra convenience and cost savings. I mean, it's just, it seems silly that we have these arguments about whether, EVs are good or bad.
How and why it got politicized still baffles me. I guess maybe because the administration that first started to make commitments to it, which was Bill Clinton, and the PNGV, the Partnership for a New Generation Vehicle. So that sort of began the, if you will, because that's when the California mandates first came out and so on. So you had that Democratic, presidency that was endorsing the idea of more efficient cars. And then, of course, that was followed by Bush, who basically abandoned that in favor of fuel cells, which was sort of a promising kind of a technology, but still hasn't really taken off. And then, of course, then you had Obama come in, and then you had, 8 years of really showing some serious support for, for the technology. And of course, that was just all underscored by, when the Biden administration came in, throwing lots and billions of dollars at the technology and companies to encourage them to go that direction. Whereas the Republican administrations, with their heavy support from the oil and gas industry, we see the result. In fact, they're talking about in China the impact that this profound shift, where 60% of all new vehicles sold in China are now EVs, what they call new generation or new energy vehicles.
New energy vehicles.
Yeah, new energy vehicles. That's having an effect upon the nation and their use of their acquisition and their need for petroleum products. And you don't think the guys in Houston, that sit on the boards down there aren't worried about that? That's what, what did they, when they see the price of oil go down, or they see, demand for oil go down, what do? They shift to plastics. And you saw that in the form of this silly conference over in, Azerbaijan and the COP29, and they're trying to figure out. There's a conference having to do with what are we going to do with plastics, because plastics have become such a problem. I mean, we're finding microplastics in babies, breast milk, for crying out loud. So we haven't reached really an agreement on how to deal with the byproduct of all that petroleum they couldn't sell, or the byproducts of the refining process that they wanted to monetize. So, yeah, I could see why they would want to fight that. And of course, we all are the sufferers from that kind of policy.
It's funny. This National Review article says auto rental giant Hertz just expanded its battery electric vehicle sell-off, with used Model 3s now available for Model 3s available for under $20,000. Hertz hopes to sell off 30,000 BEVs as it withdraws from the battery electric vehicle market. Well, that's not true. They're getting rid of Tesla Model 3s and replacing them with Polestars and something else.
Yeah.
They're replacing them with some other. The Tesla as a rental vehicle did not work well, and some of it has to do with part of the ownership experience as being able to control everything from your phone, and the people that were renting them from Hertz had a completely different experience. They didn't experience the full, Tesla benefit from the car, and it was more challenging.
I'm up here in Everett, and there are Teslas everywhere, right? I mean, sitting out here a couple days ago, there was a Tesla Model Y pulled across the street, and the neighbors right here next to my daughter, they've got a Rivian, and you see Teslas everywhere. And I got to looking at that car and I thought, you know what? I wouldn't know how to get in that car because all of the handles are flush, right?
Right.
How do I even open the thing? And how do I get in it? And where's the key to turn it on? And all these things that if I get a Hertz card, they hand me a key, right? And I know that the key goes in this slot, probably in the steering column. And I turn that, and the car turns on, and I drive away. And every now and then, I got to find a gas station, which are everywhere. Great, big, huge signs. And on the highway, it says gas, 20. I got plenty of infrastructure. No wonder I could take that Dodge from Hertz or Avis or whoever, and no problem. If I as a guy who's been around EVs for 25 years, if I would rent a Tesla, I don't know how to operate that car.
Well, I'll give you an example right now. So one of my kids is looking at buying a used EV and taking advantage of the tax credit. Okay. And we've been looking at the vehicle will get delivered to Kansas City. Well, first we were looking at a Nissan Leaf, and finding a CHAdeMO charger between Kansas City is they don't exist. Yeah. There is one in St. Joseph.
Right.
Okay. And I was like, well, you're just gonna have to get that. If you get that, you're gonna have to get it just delivered to Omaha. I mean, it's just not going to work otherwise. So now we've been looking at Chevy Bolts, and Chevy Bolts with the CCS charger. Same thing. The only difference is the Chevy Bolt has like a 240-mile range. Yeah, but the Chevy Bolt has a 240-mile range. Now, I don't know how much. It's like I haven't driven one of those cross country. I've driven a Tesla cross country before, and I know how much you lose when you're going like 70 plus highway speeds. Right. But the other thing is I don't know how much range is going to lose in the wintertime. And if that 240 really gets him from KC to Omaha, and it's 160 miles.
Yeah, well, it will, but he has to drive Highway 75. Don't drive the Interstate 29. He has to drive Highway 75 because there's a bunch of
there's chargers in Nebraska City. Yeah, I think there's one in Auburn as well.
Yes, there's one in Auburn. Yeah.
Okay, so that would make sense. That would make
Yep.
sense to be the way to do it. Take 75. But I'm just saying, that if it was a Tesla, if we're picking up a Model 3, not an
No
issue.
problem.
I know it'll take us right, off the road. And now, mind you, I think St. Joseph may still be the only option there. But
Well, I agree. I think you're right.
I know that the Tesla range is making that trip without a problem. And but there's, I also, that if you go somewhere and there's an NACS charger, it's going to work. Okay, or it's far more statistically likely
Speaking
to
of
work, and you
which,
got a chance with the CCS or Chatamo, it might not work.
yeah. Speaking of which, we went to a local Italian restaurant
Yeah.
that my wife and daughter like to go to. Do you know what's in the parking lot around the corner from the restaurant? A bank of Tesla chargers, and there were 5 Teslas parked there. This was around 6 o'clock. It was dark. Around 6 o'clock at night, there were 5 Teslas parked there getting charged.
Oh, so
Right,
it was beside a high V.
Italian restaurants located.
Yeah. What is that? The one over at 90th and something?
Oh no, that's here in Everett.
Oh, in Everett. Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
Okay,
here.
in
Yeah,
Everett.
yeah. No, that's here in Everett.
Oh, my bad.
We swung
But
into
yeah, was it in a grocery store parking lot?
No, that's what I'm saying. There is this really nice restaurant called Calabria. Okay, a
Uh-huh.
little promo for them that we like to go to because they got really good, great Italian food. And right next to that is a Taekwondo studio with all kinds of little Indian kids in there learning Taekwondo. And then
That's
there's,
funny.
I don't know what's down on the other end of it. There's some more businesses down there. But then just beyond that is a Tesla supercharger station with, I don't know, there are probably 10 chargers there. Half of them were occupied by Teslas getting charged.
All right. Well, Bill, I didn't even realize how long we've rambled on. We hadn't been
We've
on for a
rambled
few
on
days.
a long time, and thank
Holy
you.
crap. We hadn't been on for a week because of Thanksgiving. Anyways, folks, I
We'll
want to
split
thank
this in
y'all.
half.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I had more articles, but I'll save them for Mike tomorrow.
Same for me.
Yeah, anyways, folks, thanks for watching, and we'll be back on Thursday.